Welcome to this episode of Fortinet Live, in which we're going to look at the 2023 State of Operational Technology and Cybersecurity Report, which Fortinet just published. I'm Jim Richberg, Fortinet's Field CISO for the public sector, and I'm joined today by Willi Nelson, my colleague and Field CISO for Operational Technology. Welcome, Willi. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, I know we like to keep these pretty focused, Willi, so let's dive right in. Fortinet's 2023 report shows that while OT organizations have improved their overall cybersecurity posture, they also have continued opportunity for improvement, which is a polite way of saying there are still some problem areas.
Absolutely.
Can you share what you see as some of the key findings from this global survey?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so OT continues to be a target for cyber attacks at a high rate, really. The numbers of the organizations that are not incurring cyber intrusion seems to be going down, but not that significant. There's still a significant amount of improvement that needs to be made. And surprisingly, intrusion from malware, phishing is still, once again, the most common type of incidents reported. As well as, so the next bullet would be really cybersecurity practitioners overestimating their OT security maturity. In 2023, the number of respondents who considered their organization OT posture as highly mature fell 13% from 21%, which is actually pretty significant. To me, that says that people are taking it a little more serious of as they do their evaluations. But still, nearly 1/3 of the respondents indicated that both IT and OT were impacted by cyber attacks over the last year. Another point is the connected devices explosion underscores its complexity, challenges for OT organizations. Nearly 80% of the respondents reported that 100 IP-enabled OT devices in their OT environment, highlighting just how complex this environment is. And surveys find and reveal that cybersecurity solutions continue to aid in the success of OT professionals. But then again, you also have this solution sprawl that is making it very difficult to consistently incorporate, employ, and enforce policies across the organization.
So you've thrown a lot there, and clearly there was a lot of content in this survey, Willi. So did any of these takeaways surprise you? They certainly did me, but you go first, and then I'll tell you some of the things, what I reacted to on the survey.
Sure, I was initially surprised at of the increase of the organizations polled, the increase of organizations that are sending OT security to the CISO. That responsibility and ownership is going to go to the CISO within the next year, and that's up to 95% now. One of the things that didn't really surprise me is back to that security posture statement. Overestimating the security posture, that seems to be human nature. We tend to overestimate some of those things on a regular basis, and intentionally sometimes compliance kind of gets in the way, and that compliance to a standard does not kind of gives you a false sense of security posture, if you will.
Yeah. So I keyed on some of the same things that you did, and a few others, Willi. I mean, like you, I was surprised. I don't follow OT in anything like the depth you do, that so many of the CISOs are now drawn from IT and security rather than OT production people with this as a second or third hat. I mean, the last time I looked with any depth at this, it was still something that, OT was running, and therefore security was second or third tier. So the fact that we're up to 95% in what seems like a blink of an eye to me was a surprise. And something I found paradoxical in the survey was to say that despite the fact that it's IT security professionals by and large running OT security, OT leaders seem to see operational value in cybersecurity. I think the survey said that a majority, something like 2/3, said that security was enhancing their efficiency and their flexibility. It feels a little bit like SD-WAN on the IT side, where we can talk about SD-WAN as a security thing, and the organization says yes, and connect from anywhere and work from anywhere. It's got implications way beyond security. That to me was a very powerful message that people who aren't in the OT tribe running security still have OT seeing the value in what they're producing. And I was heartened that it looked like virtually 100% of boards and C-suites now look to cybersecurity as an important element of the risk calculation. You know, those new CISOs are not having to bang on the door and say, "Hi, I'm here to explain something that you care about." They care about it.
Absolutely, much easier to do it now.
Like you, I was not surprised by the maturity scale. I've spent most of my career working with things like this. This is what I call Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon effect. I mean, when you first take a look at a metric, everybody's going to rate their organization as above average, especially when it's self-attestation. To your point, Willie, when you get more familiar with it, you notice that, wow, I'm not as good as I thought I was. This is a lot harder. The one exception to that, in my experience, has been zero trust, where everybody looked at it as really hard because they looked at the maturity model, the Mount Everest pinnacle, and said, I'm not even in the foothills yet, you know, when in fact they were better. But everything else, people tend to think they're better than they are until they get into it. So, you know, this was a mix of surprising and unsurprising things. I was kind of depressed that we're still basically facing the same percentage of breaches and, you know, same success of ransomware as we had in the past. Gratified that, you know, insider threat, whether it's people making mistakes or malicious ones, has dropped, but that the overall numbers are constant. That's not a good news story for us. So, you know, one thing which I think will transition into another question that I want to ask you is this paradox of the organization surveyed that they said fewer of the breaches they experienced affected only OT. More of them were affecting either OT and IT, or only hit their organization and affected IT. Do you see that as related to this convergence of networking and security and the connectedness of OT to IT?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. You know, it's obviously convergence, but I think it's we start getting visibility into it, right? And the context of things, that you start putting that context in to where it is applying, and you start using that in the OT, allows you to start understanding why that continues to go up. You know, networking and IT teams they're under an exorbitant amount of pressure to perform and adapt. And OT, when you bring that in, it's just one more piece to have to do. The shift in finding and employing solutions that implement security across both is also something that's kind of new to the OT environment. You know, IT, we've done it for years, where we continue to kind of stretch our footprint. OT was always like, you know, hands out, you know, please don't touch our environment. And as you put earlier, you know, we're finding some efficiencies there that we didn't know were there. And that collaboration between the two is paramount to a success, I believe, for today and the future.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're so far beyond the air gapped days of saying OT doesn't touch the internet. You can't get to it from offsite. You know, that was a, you know, years ago, decade ago approach to it. But I found it just interesting that when you get breached now, it's not just OT's problem. You know, it's something that hits both sides, the corporate side as well, or frankly may hit them more than it hurt you. I mean, come on, Colonial Pipeline at the end of the day was essentially a problem on the IT side, wasn't it?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So this is shared pain where, frankly, maybe the OT guys are in a better shape on security than we often think, despite the survey. So,
well, I think that, you know, to that point real quick, Jim, that, you know, boards now are asking those questions on where is that pain going to be, and they're paying attention. Yeah. And I think that's enabling the IT and the OT teams to move forward and work together.
Yeah. So to that point, Willie, you know, based on your ongoing conversations and with organizations and their boards, based on the results of the survey, what are the approaches and the best practices that you're putting forward to companies in OT security?
Yeah, I'll name off a few. You know, vendor and OT security platform strategy. You have to have this consolidation plan to reduce that complexity and accelerate the outcomes. 2, network access control. You know, NAC has been around for a long time. We deployed in IT a long time ago. bringing it into OT now is going to help my visibility, and also going to help when it comes to what's the right technology that's supposed to be there, and worry about those rogue devices. The zero trust approach, right? So you and I have had this conversation multiple times. It's a mindset. You've got to adopt it, and you've got to deploy it. And don't think you're going to do it tomorrow. It's going to be an approach. It's going to be a philosophy. It's going to be a journey. Awareness, training, and education, right? That's one that's been on our plates for, as I think my entire career, where, the biggest risk is always the user, right? It's the user that clicks on something. It's the user that puts that puts a USB stick in, those sorts of things. Those education pieces are still very, very important, and one that Fortinet is here to help with. And then, lastly, that platform approach. We have all those open AIs. You have that fabric ready technology. Having the ability to have visibility across my organization, but when I have that threat intel that comes in and telemetry that says I have an issue and I need to make a change, and I can make that change across my fabric, that's the only way you're going to scale.
Yeah. So you said something there that had struck me as a little bit surprising in the survey, and that was there appeared to be a drop in the use of cyber threat intelligence in these organizations in 2023 compared to 2022. Did that surprise you? It certainly surprised me, because I'm an Intel guy, and I keep saying you can't protect yourself against a threat that you don't understand, right, or can't detect. How is this working out in OT?
I'd say if it's easy to say, it surprised me, and yet it didn't, right? And I think the reason I say that is it surprised me because I'm with you in the sense of, like, you have to have it. The reason it didn't surprise me is because you're looking at an industry that for the most part hasn't had that intel, so they don't necessarily know how to use it, right? So they're in that crawl walk run stage, and they're out there crawling a lot of times in the OT space when it comes to security. It is something that's new to a lot of the organizations. They've always supported it. They've always felt that they needed it, and they were protected. But now I have to make it actionable within my organization, and I don't know how to do that a lot of times. So, in my opinion, that's the reason it's like that, is the fact that I have this intel, but now what do I do with it?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be interested to see what next year's survey shows. Not only in threat intel, but as I looked at the survey, it looked like this was the first year we had asked about NAC and role-based access control, and over half of the organizations are using it. And I think we'll see those numbers go up next year, because I think those approaches have got a lot of potential, more potential arguably in OT than they do in IT. I mean, in OT, you could whitelist. I mean, you should know who should be connecting,
right, and
you should know what acceptable commands to give are, in a sense that it's much harder to do on the IT side. So I think we're going to find tools like that we've only started measuring in the survey now take off next year. That's Jim's prediction for next year.
I'm right there with you, man. I agree.
So final point, I'm the public sector guy. I'm involved in things like strategy. The new national cyber strategy talks about resilience, building resilience. We can't have perfection. You talked about zero trust. I can't guarantee nothing bad will happen. I can just minimize the spread. How do you build resilience, cyber resilience, into OT and critical infrastructure? This is a new priority now. They're telling us you got to do better. We've had a market failure. You've got to do better cybersecurity. How is this going to play out in operational technology going forward? How do you build this kind of resilience? Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think that it's the same way we did it in IT, Jim. Is the first thing you have to do is understand what's critical. What do I have? What's critical to my business? And then look at it. Almost to some extent, I tell folks to, when you do your self-assessment, be honest. Right, be honest with yourself, and then understand that everything breaks. What happens from there? And so building out that playbook, and building out that your teams to make sure they're able to react appropriately is what's going to be extremely important. We're talking about an environment that in OT, they didn't have cyber. They don't have cyber playbooks. They don't have an instant playbook from that perspective. They have resiliency. They have BCDR all day long, because they've had to keep this environment up forever. From that perspective, that is not new. Matter of fact, you talk about an environment that, safety first, and the CIA triad is upside down, right? It's all about availability. But you have to change this new piece in the sense of like, what are the threat vectors that come in now that I'm not aware of, or that I wasn't prepared for because last year or last month or 10 years ago we weren't connected to the world.
Yeah. In other words, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, this is
Right.
This is classic risk management and application of basic cybersecurity. So, I always enjoy talking to you, Willi. This has been a great conversation. I thank the audience for joining us for this episode of Fortinet Live. If you'd like more information about the report or to see a copy of the survey, go to our website. You can look for it, the 2023 State of Operational Technology and Cybersecurity Report. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.